I had to put together this presentation half an hour ago, so some things are still in the wrong language, because this slide I took from a presentation I did in Sweden. The idea is that this is me with my, at the time, best friend. His black eye was not my doing, so I've been on a bicycle for a long time. And then I just cycled, and I was a diplomat. I became Dutch ambassador to Finland. I cycled to work, and the newspapers thought that was so peculiar that they wrote about it. It says the cycling ambassador. This is not for today. I am chairman of the board, president of the European Cyclists Federation, which is the umbrella organization for European cyclist organizations, civil society organizations, organizations of people who cycle. So in the Netherlands, that would be the Fietsersbond, in Germany, ADFC. We work to promote cycling at the international level. So the Fietsersbond works with the Dutch government and with the city authorities. We do it with the EU, United Nations, World Health Organization, World Tourism Organizations, and what have you. 60 members all over Europe, basically all countries except Northern Macedonia. And we have an office in Brussels with 30 FTE who help us do all that work. More and better cycling for all in Europe. How difficult can it be? That's our mission. And why we do that? Well, you all know, probably you are all into cycling in one way or another, so you know why we will be cycling. For the environment, for our health, to make our cities livable, and for more vibrant local economies and inclusive societies. This is our vision for 2030. We try to put some numbers on it. Safety, quantity, more political support, higher investment, and of course more and better infrastructure, because that remains the biggest hurdle to more cycling. These are some of our products. Many of you have heard about the VeloCity conference, the biggest global cycling conference every year. Next year, Rimini, Italy, 27 in Japan, and in 2028 in Geneva. So I book it in your calendar. It's often the second, third week in June. We produce reports. We coordinate the Eurovelo long-distance cycling network all over Europe, and even organize a Eurovelo and cycling tourism conference. This is still an old one. We just were in Balatonfüred in Hungary 2 weeks ago with the Eurovelo and cycling tourism conference. But most of our output, most of our work, I mean, these are the products that you see on the outside, but most of our work is behind the scenes, in stakeholder groups, in lobbying, in doing projects in the EU. So, 20 minutes ago, I had to come up with a theme, a subject for this presentation, so I decided to take the European... This looks like an AI-generated picture, but it is actually real. You can't imagine that it's real, but it is real. It is taken in Frankfurt, along the river with the European buildings in the background. So, why did we get this European Declaration on Cycling? Well, first, of course, the climate emergency. Secondly, the pandemic. We have almost forgotten about it, but it was real only 5 years ago. And what happened during the pandemic? There were no bikes, because everybody wanted a bike, and the bikes and the parts were sold out, or they were stuck on a ship in the Suez Canal. Just a reminder, we all learned this in school. How does the EU work? You know, the European Commission, the Parliament, the Council. The Council is the meeting of the governments of the member countries. And the EU member states, headed by the then Belgian Minister for Transport, they agreed on a declaration on cycling. Then the European Parliament took over and they adopted a resolution on wanting a European cycling policy. And then in that sense, the Council and the Parliament squeezed the Commission into moving forward, because if you want something to happen, the Commission must have to do it. They didn't take the initiative themselves, but with the support of Frans Timmermans, I'm not going into Dutch politics today, but he was Environment Commissioner at the time, so he helped bring along this declaration. So it finally happened, 8 April 2024. Years of work we had put into this, but in the end it delivered 5 minutes of fame. Some of you recognize Jill Warren there in the picture, at the time the CEO of our federation. But 10 years of impact, that's of course the most important thing. So what does it say? This is EU speak, right? Unleash the full potential. But this is the important phrase. The most sustainable, accessible, inclusive, low-cost, healthy forms of transport and recreation. And a strategic compass. This means that cycling will be mainstreamed in future EU mobility transport policies. At least that's what they say. But of course we'll have to check that it really happens. It is a first, most ambitious ever strategic compass, coordinated action, but it is a political document. So it's not legally binding. We cannot go to the European Court of Justice and say, you need to do this. If it would have been legally binding, we would never have got it. So you have to work within the margins that you get. So what? It has a number of chapters. Developing, strengthening cycling policies at all the levels. So that is the EU level, the national levels, national cycling strategies, regional bodies, local authorities, because of course cycling in the end is something that happens locally. I see a bicycle mayor here in the room. Bicycle mayors in different cities, they know that cycling is something that is local. This is the most important thing, to prioritize cycling. So that doesn't mean a level playing field, no. Prioritize, so cycling is first. I must add, together with public transport. In sustainable urban mobility planning. So it's not a level playing field, but really cycling should be put at an advantage over other modes. And it's not only addressing governments. It's also companies, bike-to-work schemes, company bikes, etc. Delivery, we're at the Cargo Bike Festival here. Parking, etc. Organizations, institutions, universities, schools, etc. Not only government. And of course, citizens, because they are the ones who cycle. Awareness raising, advocacy, training, capacity building. In the Netherlands, this is not an issue, but in many countries, there are lots of people who simply cannot cycle, don't know how to cycle, don't have access to a bike. There's a lot to be gained there. We will later today hear from Van Raam. Waar ben je, Van Raam? Daar ben je, ja. Because there are also, I am convinced there are more people who can cycle than who can drive a car. When you think of children, elderly people, people without driving licenses. But still there are also people who cannot ride a regular bike. But that doesn't mean that they shouldn't be cycling or shouldn't be able to cycle, because there are other types of bikes. And we often forget about the people who cannot ride a regular two-wheel bike. But there are solutions to all of that, and the infrastructure also needs to cater to that, because these bikes are often wider, just like cargo bikes. Cycling must become more affordable. Of course, cycling is more affordable than driving a car, but still there are people who cannot afford a car and who cannot afford a bike. And there's also incentives there. That's why we have worked in Europe for lower VAT rates on bicycle purchase, bicycle repair. There are subsidy schemes, there can be tax breaks for companies, in other incentive schemes. And there I should also already mention the Social Climate Fund. It's a big bag of money from the EU. to counter the negative effects of the electric transition. People who cannot afford to switch from an ICE car to an electric car, they may be able to switch to an electric bike, for instance. More and better infrastructure is about quality, quantity, and very important, attractiveness. There's so much research that shows that the attractiveness of a cycle route really has impact on how many people use it. Quality is, of course, safety, physical separation, sufficient space, reduced maximum speeds for motorized traffic. Quantity, continuity, coherent networks. So many places I see in Europe who build a bike lane here or there, but it's a disconnected network and they need to use a bit of unsafe road for motorized traffic with high speeds in between. This is a very nice example, of course, from Paris, who really try to duplicate the metro network to a cycle path network, but also connecting rural areas, suburbs, and to the city centers. Safe and secure bicycle parking. One of the main reasons for people not to cycle is the risk of theft. Maybe not so much in the Netherlands, but in many other countries. And also for the connectivity with railway stations, bus stops, mobility hubs. Of course, bikes are great, but there's one thing they are not so great for, and that's long distances. So that's why you need intermodality, connecting cycling to the public transport network, as happens in the Netherlands, in Utrecht. I don't know if anybody of you were in the bike parking below the station here today. And including charging points for e-bikes, because e-bikes, well, I don't know if there are any non-e-cargo bikes here at the exhibition today, but electricity is changing the game. Increasing investment in cycling policies. This is addressed to the governments, but also to different European instruments, which also may be available in the Netherlands and in other, what shall we say, richer, more developed countries. There's the Cohesion Fund, the Regional Development Fund, the Agricultural Fund for Rural Development. Even you can even fund cycling projects through that one. This one I forgot the name of. The Recovery and Resilience Facility, that's a bit outdated now. That was the post-COVID investment program. And the Social Climate Fund that is coming online next year. Where the governments, the Dutch government, other governments, now have to send their plans to Brussels how they plan to invest those funds. So if your government hasn't sent in a plan yet, push them to do that and to include cycling and active mobility in their plan. Road safety, I won't dwell too long on that. Everybody knows this. I said that an important reason not to cycle is bicycle theft, but the biggest reason is perceived lack of safety. Maybe not so much in the Netherlands, but in most countries in Europe and the rest of the world, that's the reason that 50% of the people quote for not cycling. And this is interesting also, I suppose, for this crowd. One of the reasons why we got this declaration going is that we could show that it creates jobs in Europe, industrial jobs, but also service jobs. When we increase production in Europe, that we become less dependent on too long supply chains. And that is something that the European Commission was very interested in. The car industry is going to lose lots of jobs in the electrification process. But because it's interesting, in automotive, you need fewer people to produce an electric car than to produce an ICE car and to maintain it. But with bikes, it's the other way around. The production of an e-bike is more labor intensive than the production of an an acoustic bike. And there's more service required, there's more repair required, etc. So where the jobs in the automotive sector go down, they could go up in the cycling sector. Multimodal, I talked about it before. I always love this picture. If this is a bus stop, then your catchment area is 5 minutes walking. It's very small, but if you use a bike, then it's 5 minutes cycling, which is 3 times as far as 5 minutes walking. But the catchment area gets 10 times bigger because it's a circle. You know, P times 2R, no, R square, sorry. And well, and then you get things like this. I always very much like the picture to the right. I think it's in India. Bikes on trains, the solution that we don't choose in the Netherlands, because they even have a bike path inside the train in Denmark. But we choose in the Netherlands for the bikes at stations. Take your own bike to the station, leave it safely, and there's a share bike on the other end. Multimodality and cycling tourism. Recreational cycling. Of course, cycling is a mode of transport, but it's also a way to make tourism, which is one of the most polluting sectors, more sustainable. And there's also a demand for it among the people who travel, tourists. They want active holidays, they want sustainable travel, and they want to stay closer to home. Because, I mean, you can, of course, cycle from here to there, but very few people do that. But you can also do a small stretch here or there, and stay close to home, but still use the touristic cycling infrastructure. And this is also this is a very, very old picture. It's from a European Parliament report in 2012 comparing jobs in the cruise tourism sector and the cycle tourism sector. And nobody, I mean, when you see this, you think, huh? Is there more jobs and more turnover in cycling tourism than in cruise ship tourism? Yes, there is. And why is that? It's counterintuitive, because when the cruise ship comes into Amsterdam port, it's like 18 stories high, in your face, it's very, very big. But when a cycling tourist crosses the city limits, nobody will see them, nobody will notice them, but there are many of them. So that's about really the visual. How many of you are Dutch? Okay, then I can do this. You all know the famous poem by Kees Budding about the bike? No? Een fiets is bijna niets. That was the whole poem. The poem also is bijna niets. But that's because of a bicycle, it's mostly air. It's a couple of metal parts, but the rest of it is air. You look right through it, and that's why it's not in your face like the cruise ship. And then data collection. There will be more talk today later about data collection by my colleague Holger Houbold, who will be coming from Brussels, because that's what policymakers always ask us. Yes, you tell us we should invest in cycling, but how much will it save us? How much do we invest? What is the return on investment? Where is the data? How many people cycle? This remains a challenge. I know the famous fietsprofessor Marco de Brummelstroet always says, we don't need more data. We have all the data we need. That may be true. I would have loved to discuss that with Meredith, but she isn't here, unfortunately. But we keep being asked for data, and actually we even get paid by the EU, by national governments, to collect more data. Governments have a strong need for data on cycling. So what's next? This is a bit an old slide. The guy was just new when I made this presentation that I just pulled out. The important thing is that the President of the European Commission, Ursula von der Leyen, has tasked this guy, Apostolos Tzitzikostas, with producing progress reports on the implementation of the declaration. So it's not just language, but that something actually happens. The first report was published, I think, last week. I have not had time to study it, so I cannot report on it. But the people who were there at the Urban Mobility Days in Vilnius last week, they returned happy. So I suppose that it's okay. And I think, oh yeah, this is, well, you all know this one, right? Anybody who doesn't know this one? No. Okay, good. Why we all do this? Transport, about 25% of global carbon emissions. Everything goes down, but transport still goes up. Half of that is cars and vans. So if we can only replace a bit of the cars and vans with cycles, cargo bikes, and all the other beautiful technology you see around here, there is a lot to gain. Well, you all know this. I'm going to conclude this. So here we are. This is the end. That's it. Where are we on time? Oh, perfect. I have time for questions before we go to the next speaker. You first, and then you. Jaron. Microphone. Somebody who wants to walk with the microphone.
Welcome to the International Cargo Bike Festival. I'm from the UK. There you go. Who's the question?
Thanks. My name is Jaron Bornstein. I was former founder of Cargaroo, a shared cargo bike company. I have one remark and one question. The remark is that I think you mentioned lots of things, and also you probably know what I'm going to say, but I would like to stress the importance of cargo bikes in the picture of biking, because they are an important replacement of cars, of course, in addition to normal bikes. So I think that's important to stress. My question is, you mentioned safety and the perception of safety. And I still think safety in a bike is relatively high, especially in areas where people cycle a lot. But perceived safety, what I hear around me, is going down because of the development with fat bikes and also electric bikes. So people who have a normal bike, they sometimes feel less safe. And I was wondering if the ECF has some kind of vision or policy on that.
Well, it's good you point out. Well, first to your first remark, if I would have made a presentation for the ICBF, it would have been more focused on cargo bikes, but I only heard this like half an hour ago. So that's why, but of course, cargo bikes, and that's why we're here today, all of us, right? Play a very important role in the transition. As to safety, you said correctly that it's about perceived safety, not about absolute safety, because even if it's safe, people may feel unsafe. People feel unprotected on a bike. You know, in a car you are enveloped by this big metal cage. Many people feel safer. Maybe not even only traffic safety, but personal safety, social safety. Like, well, I have to ask the women in the room whether they always feel safe on their bike, and well, we won't do that now, but you know what I mean by social safety. And that's independent of electric bikes or fat bikes or what have you. The other issue is, yes, there are more bikes now who run faster and who you don't hear them always coming because they don't make very much sound. But it's an infrastructure issue. There is not enough space. There's too much space for cars and too little space for bicycles. That's the long and the short answer to your question. It's not about e-bikes or fat bikes or whatever bikes. It's about urban space and about cars.
Thanks.
Hello, my name is Paul, and I'm a student studying urban mobility. And you mentioned earlier something that stuck in my head is that the Declaration on European Cycling is not binding. And if it were binding, you wouldn't get it passed. Is it somewhat possible in the future decades that we do get something that's binding, that's obligatory, or is this a slow process that the Federation is working towards? I just want you to go into more detail about that.
A part of that was, well, what shall we say? The politics of what is feasible. We were running out of time before the elections to the European Parliament in June last year. You saw this was adopted in April. That's only 2 months before the election, so it was really a last chance. A legally binding document would have involved much longer negotiations and would have been susceptible to counter pressure from, let's say, the car industry and other vested interests. It would have met much, much more political resistance. It is a point, in fact, is that 2 countries that didn't sign the declaration were Germany and Sweden, 2 big car-producing countries. So it's about political feasibility. At some point, you have to, through saying Dutch, count your buttons. How do you say that in English, Emma? Count your buttons, count je knopen tellen. This may be asking too much. Anyway, the Dutch people in the room know what I mean. You have to go for what you can achieve, which is not ideal, but you need to be pragmatic about it.
But in the future, is there potential?
In the future? Well, that depends on politics, I suppose. If there would be, in many European countries and in the European Parliament, a political majority that is strongly in favor of sustainable and active mobility, yes, but that's so when you go vote out there, think about cycling when you vote, and we may get there.
Makes sense. Thank you.
One last question.
Hey, good morning. I'm a transportation planner from the U.S., relocated to Germany, but I'm really curious if you can think of any examples or speak to any work that's being done on the inclusion of cargo bikes in disaster response scenarios.
I know some practical examples. I remember the earthquake in Turkey. I think it's not quite disaster response, but that there are some examples from Ukraine. I don't know about Gaza. Of course, cargo bikes still need a rideable surface, like cars, but the good thing is when, for instance, fuel becomes scarce or unavailable, and cargo bikes, traditional cargo bikes, even non-electric cargo bikes, could be part of the disaster response. But I'm not aware of any structural work. No.